It's one of my favorite times of the year. A lot of these teams are holding joint practices, and the Chargers are last couple of days with the New Orleans Saints. And joining us now, the youngest GM in Chargers history, Tom Telesco, one of the smart guys in this league via the Cowherd Global Satellite Network. All right, so let's, first of all, joint practices, Tom. Your idea, the coach's idea, who makes the call, and does your team like them?
Well, I know I enjoy them. Yes, myself and Anthony, we had talked about it, and we've done this for the last couple of years. We worked with the Rams last week for 2 days with Sean McVay and his staff, and we're working with Sean Payton and the Saints today, worked with them yesterday, and we get a lot out of it. I mean, it's a controlled environment. The tempo is just a little bit higher and better, more intense than a regular practice against ourselves, but still a little bit less than a live game. And we can work on certain situations specifically in these practices that may or may not come up in a preseason game, especially with your ones, since your ones don't play a lot in the preseason. So there's certain situations we can work against. It's good work. But I think the big thing has to be with the right people, and working with the Saints and then working with the Rams, really good teams. Our practices have been tough. They've been physical, but there's been no fights. I mean, there's nothing that I hate worse than having fights in the practice field. And you can be tough and physical and be disciplined at the same time. So that's what we've seen here, and we expect the same thing today. You know,
Tom, it's easy for everybody to say that, preseason doesn't matter, but you guys are poring over film every day. There's a reason you're having joint practices. You're gonna make very big decisions on this roster. Tell me something that you do get out of preseason and why you would argue that you do need 3 or 4 preseason games in this league.
Well, you do need some preseason games because a lot of it is you're evaluating individual players. You're not so much evaluating your team. You're not evaluating your team run game, your team pass game, your team coverages. If you're looking at individual players or individual matchups and trying to get a feel for them, how they fit into your scheme moving into the year and how they fit into the 53-man roster. But for a lot of positions, you talk about running backs and linebackers and safeties. I mean, you need to have some live tackling. That has to be done. And you see that in the preseason games. Now, I'm not so sure we need 4 anymore. I used to believe that we needed all 4 from a front office perspective to evaluate our players. I've come off that a little bit. I think we'd be fine with 3, especially when you have combined practices with different people. But there still is that need to get out and get some live work before our preseason starts, or before the regular season starts, excuse me.
You know, Tom, it's interesting. We were saying this, is that in the NFL, you want to be proactive to avoid a disaster, not reactive. Belichick, even in Tom Brady's prime, would draft a quarterback every couple years with a decent draft pick. Phillip Rivers does not get hurt and I think he's got 2 or 3 good years left. But you have built a roster that doesn't have a lot of holes in it. You could certainly, with a first or maybe a second pick, consider taking a very talented college quarterback. Are you getting into that space, Tom, where you got to sit down with Phillip and say, hey, don't be offended, Phillip, but we are getting to a point we don't have a lot of needs on this roster and we have to protect ourselves. Have you had that discussion yet?
Yes. I don't know if I went as far as saying we don't have a lot of needs on our roster. I wouldn't go that far. But no, we've had that discussion with him. And look, internally in the building, it's not something we've ignored. We've been proactive with making sure we know every quarterback coming out in the draft. Because we know, hey, look, Phillip he's our leader. He's our quarterback. He's our quarterback this year. He'll be our quarterback next year and maybe even longer. But we do have to have a plan in place for the long-term future. So it's something we've worked on. There's no doubt about that. We just haven't found the right quarterback at the right place for us yet. And we've been lucky enough to not to force that pick. That's what we don't want to do, is force that. But no, it's something really since I arrived here 6 years ago. It's something that's been on the front of our minds with every draft and free agency as well. But certainly in the draft is something that we're looking at. We want to be proactive with that. I don't want to have a gap between Phillip and whoever that next player is. But that's something that we're always working through.
Okay, so I ran into Melvin Gordon at the airport about 5 days ago, and he's a great kid, and he wants to play. And in the end, though, it's a situation where running backs, analytics, he knows it. It's not a position now that plays for 15 years in this league. I thought after talking to him, it felt like there's some common ground. I read Twitter today and NFL reporters, they're like, no, they're miles apart. Can you give me some clarity? Do you feel closer or further than 2 weeks ago with Melvin?
Oh, since the last time you talked to him at the airport?
Yeah.
Let's see. I don't know if it's hard to characterize where exactly we are, and I wouldn't even try to get into that. But look, I do see value in the running back position. I mean, they carry the ball, especially this day and age. You have to be able to catch the ball out of the backfield, which he does extremely well, and you have to pass protect. So there's a lot of value there. In our goal here for all of our players, not just Melvin, is we want to reward our own. That's what we'd like to do. We like to pay them and reward them for their past production, but more importantly, their future performance. But what we can't lose sight of is the main goal, and the main goal is to win a championship and to compete for championships year after year after year. In order to do that, we do have to be fiscally responsible with our salary cap, and that's just part of it. So we have to find that balance. Obviously, I haven't found that balance yet, but we're in 3 weeks of training camp going into 4 weeks, and at this point, we really got to focus on these guys behind me right now, working hard, working together, working with their teammates, getting ready to play the Colts on opening day. And we can't lose sight of that. And we're lucky we have an offense that it's balanced. We have a veteran quarterback. And obviously, look, we know we're a better team with Melvin Gordon on it. But he's not here right now, and hopefully something works out. But in the meantime, we got to get ready to go. We play an excellent football team in week 1. So we'll get together with what we have and keep going.
Is it harder for you as a general manager? I think if I recall, you traded up to get him. I mean, you liked him. Is it harder when you liked the kid, when he's good in the locker room? I mean, is there something you even consider about, listen, I like him, the guys like him, he's good in the room, does that matter at all, or is it all data?
Yeah, I lost you there a little bit, but yes, look, this is a people business. There's emotions involved. I mean, yes, we look at data, we look at analytics, but there's also people skills involved. And players that lay it on the line for you, do everything you ask, are great people off the field, have the intangibles you look for, and have big-time talent. We want to keep those players around. That's our philosophy here, is to draft, develop, and re-sign. Now, does it mean you can re-sign every single player? Maybe not necessarily, but that's our philosophy when you find the right people. And like you just mentioned, we traded up to get him in the first round. And, in a period in the NFL that some teams maybe not be willing to take a running back in the first round, but we thought he's a great fit for us. And, he's proved us right with that.
All right, Tom, you look great. Camp with the Saints today. Keep kicking butt. We'll talk soon. Thank you.
Anytime. Thanks for having me on, Colin.
You bet. Hi, everybody. Thanks for watching. Subscribe here to get the latest from the show. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from The Herd or go watch a few segments from other shows on FS1.